This is called an electric flashing scallop. Sometimes you'll see it listed as a disco scallop or disco clam, but it's really a scallop. There's a Caribbean form of this that's real closely related called a red flame scallop, but it doesn't have that electric white membrane that you're looking at. I've caught it during a pause here. In a minute I'll turn it on and you can see it. Well, I'm not turning it on, I'll let the video run. There are no batteries in these things or anything. This is a live creature, and this is the only echinoderm that shows this type of an effect. It's not a bioluminescence, so it's not something that you think of like a glowworm having. This is something that's different. It actually has this membrane. Let me show my hand here. It's got this membrane like on the inside of this part of my palm, and it flips and shows it to you, and down itself like this, back and forth. So you'll see it zigzag back and forth on it and double flash, and it'll happen on the bottom lip that they have here too. And it's only a small amount where it connects there, but whenever it has this curved effect to it, there's a lensing effect in it. There's blue pigments and a lot of white and metallic pigments that are in it, and so it's extremely reflective. But due to observations, whenever there's no light, it doesn't emit anything, even though it does look like kind of like Dr. Frankenstein, I presume, and the zzz that you see going on. So you see this flashing effect here. And that's only one about 1.5 inches, 2 inches probably wide. But it has this membrane that flashes back and forth, and you can see it does one side and the other. There's a real good showing of it. And if it's not caught right in the light, it doesn't show up real well. You can keep these things in the captive hobby of saltwater aquariums, and this is a reef tank that's here. In fact, all these pictures are. But what we're showing here is the fact that this thing can go anywhere. It's actually in the flying scallop family or lamia family, and it does this thing whenever it wants to where it can release the little tentacles that it's got attached that hold it onto the rock on one side of its teardrop here, whereas it comes back on its body, it has a little teardrop shape like this, and out of that it puts out peta ciliaria. This really means like hairy feet, and it's what sticks and attaches it to something, and it will take them and attach it to rocks. Now what's incredible about that is they can also let it loose whenever they want to, and when they do, they can fly and go choo 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 choo. You may have seen this before. There's different types of clams and scallops that do this, but this is the only one that's got the electric mouth. What's neat about that effect of the stickerness is that they found out that it can actually activate itself to be able to stick within fragments of a second, hundredths of a second. And so they've got this little sticker thing that comes out on its foot, and they'll fly up to something, and in the want of getting up here, whenever they get up to it, they'll put out that stinger, and whenever it touches that rock or surface, it can actually stick to it, and it will be a permanent bond until it wants to. Now, the U.S. government spent millions of dollars through DuPont and a few other companies at one time trying to figure out what that was, because it showed a glue, and a natural glue that was much, much stronger than anything that we have. And so in that effect, they were looking for it, and NASA was involved in this supposedly also, in the whole effects, and we couldn't recreate the effect that this could put out no matter what we did until the late 1990s. And what this did develop over time with different things that we're trying to create to make this effect were two-part epoxies. that were super strong, but also super glue, and a different route off of that concept and trying to find an extremely powerful glue. But this two-part epoxy thing that it has, that it puts out, it can, whenever it wants to, pop it off and release it. And that's something that we will probably never be able to do for a long, long time in any type of glue, to where we can go, okay, it's a glue that's strong enough to hold up a car, but then if we want to, we can go and turn it off. And could you turn it back on? Well, it kind of takes life to make that happen. But it's quite a unique creature. And hopefully when you're looking at it here and it shows up, you can see that idea. And it coughs and does little things like this. It catches itself and traps itself in between the little notches or niches in your rock. And one thing that can be a problem is that it has its own idea. There, I finally caught it. It has its own idea of where it wants to do it. So whenever you'll get one of these things, you can put it in your aquarium and in front of your live rock in the sand bed. That's where a lot of people will try to do it. But it'll, next thing you know, open up and start showing itself in your light, and it'll be like, oh boy, and then all of a sudden it'll pick up and jump up into your live rock, and who knows where it'll be. And it might stick somewhere overnight, and you'll come in and the next day it'll be somewhere, and a couple of days later it might be somewhere different, and then it'll find a place that it likes, the nutrient, the water rushing by itself, and how it seems to be, now this is the best place I've got going, or this is good enough, or what I like. And it'll hang there for a long, long time. Weeks, if not months. But then, every once in a while, it'll decide, nah, and it'll let loose of itself and cough around and see if it can find grass on the greener side, if you will. And see if it can find some place that's a little better. Now, they're generally going to be 1.5 inches, 2 inches across is the smallest ones you'll get, and that'll be something that's about this size in hand to finger wise, but they can get up to about 4 or 5. Those red flame scallops I was talking about get almost the size of your hand. And you've seen the shells that come with this. It's that common looking little shell. But that's for a lot of different species of them, and not just this one exclusively in itself. But it's also one of the most unique things. You can see that flashing and pulsing that's there, and it really does start to look like Dr. Frankenstein, I presume. They get up to, they'll find them down 40, 50, 60 foot, and can get up into shallows also. But they're non-photosynthetic, meaning that they really don't grow off the light in any way, so it's not like that. But they stay in that tidal zone where they're looking for nutrient, and they're looking for something that, parts of food. Now, theoretical people have looked at this, and they say, why he's doing that is that he's attracting particles to himself. And in the saltwater world, there are micro shrimps that are just like dust. And so something like this is gigantic, and it looks like a disco. And so next thing you know, you might want to be attracted to go off into this thing, and it breathes and bivalves, and so it'll catch you. And it does this at night and day, but it doesn't show up without lighting having effect. So you can see these particles floating through the water here, and how it tries to collect them. And so they've often said, well, what it's doing with that lightning effect right there is it's trying to pull in nutrient and attract little buglets to it, which sounds fantastic, but also in that effect, it's going to attract a triggerfish or a pufferfish or something that might kill it or eat it, because it's a scallop, right? So they seem to be found, well, they're actually found from northern Australia all the way through Bali and Indo-Pacific area, and the edge of the Philippines, and getting going there now due to transference. But also they are usually found in the shallows because they're trying to filter feed out of the water. And so whenever you do have creatures like this, you're going to be needing to get things like phytoplankton and some of the microfoods that they have, and you'll just put that in the dispersal. You don't have to targetedly feed this thing, but you'll put it into the water. Here's a good look at its shell, and you can see how white it is right here, and the shape of it and its little textures. It doesn't have the big rivulets that you see often in them. But again, that's just one of the neatest scallops or clams. I've shown a recent video to you about maxima clams, and they are photosynthetic and have their effects to them, and they look like some kind of weird Zodiac 1960s painting to them. And then here we have something back from Dr. Frankenstein, I presume, here with this electricity here. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Something that sells for about 25-30 bucks, usually on average. Get them together, and sometimes you can get them for even less. Peace.